My parents hired a lawyer to prove I was insane so they could steal my $15 million inheritance. My brother Benedict, the golden child surgeon, sat in that witness box describing how I destroyed our grandfather's painting in a psychotic break while covered in red paint, laughing like a maniac. The judge was nodding. I was losing. Then he asked one question. "Miss Vance, why didn't you defend yourself when police arrived?" I pulled out my hidden recorder. My brother's confession filled the courtroom. His face went white. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. The courtroom smelled like furniture polish and generational money, that particular scent of old wood and older secrets that clings to places where rich people's problems get solved quietly. I sat at the defendant's table watching my own family try to erase me from existence, and the only thought screaming through my head was, they have no idea I've been recording everything for 3 months. My brother Benedict sat in the witness box like he owned it, wearing his white doctor's coat like a costume designed specifically to convince strangers he was trustworthy. Behind him, my mother Genevieve dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief that probably cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month, performing grief with the skill of someone who'd been rehearsing this role her entire life. My father Alistair, the former district attorney who'd spent 20 years prosecuting actual criminals, stared at me with the kind of disappointment usually reserved for serial killers, not daughters who chose art school over law school. And their lawyer, Douglas Whitmore, wore a suit so expensive it looked like it had been assembled by Italian craftsmen using thread spun from the tears of struggling artists. When he smiled at Judge Howard Brennan, I could practically see the billable hours adding up in his head like a slot machine hitting jackpot. This wasn't a family trying to help their troubled daughter. This was a hostile takeover disguised as concern. This was theft with a sympathetic soundtrack. "Your Honor," Whitmore began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, the kind that costs $300 a bottle. "We come before you today not out of malice, but out of love. The Vance family is desperately trying to save their daughter from herself before it's too late." Love. He actually used that word. Love. I wanted to laugh so hard my ribs would crack. I wanted to stand up and scream that love doesn't hire lawyers to declare you incompetent. Love doesn't frame you for crimes you didn't commit. Love doesn't drug your wine and try to force you to sign away your inheritance while you're sedated. But I didn't move, didn't scream, didn't even blink. Just sat there with my hands folded on the table like I was meditating, my face blank as fresh canvas, and I touched the recorder hidden in my jacket pocket. The one that held every confession, every threat, every moment of their mask slipping. My lawyer, Karen Chen, sat beside me radiating controlled fury. She told me that morning over coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. Stay calm no matter what they say. Stay stone. Emotional reactions are what they want. They need you to look unstable. So you're going to be the sanest person in that room even if it kills you. So I became a statue, a witness to my own character assassination. Judge Brennan looked tired in the way that only family court judges look tired, like he'd seen every possible configuration of human dysfunction and had stopped being surprised that people who share DNA could be so creative with cruelty. He shuffled through the mountain of paperwork in front of him and sighed. "Mr. Whitmore, you're asking me to grant an emergency conservatorship that would essentially strip Miss Octavia Vance of her legal rights and hand control of a $15 million estate to the same family members she claims have been trying to steal from her since the day she inherited it. I hope you understand that's not a request I take lightly. You better have evidence that goes beyond family drama and hurt feelings." Oh, I liked this judge. I liked him immediately. Whitmore cleared his throat with the practiced timing of someone who'd spent years in courtrooms. "Your Honor, we have extensive documentation. Police reports detailing violent incidents, psychiatric evaluation requests, expert witness testimony from Dr. Benedict Vance, a highly respected plastic surgeon in this community who has personally witnessed his sister's mental deterioration. Miss Octavia Vance is, quite simply, a danger to herself. And possibly to others. A danger to herself, I thought, my nails digging into my palms under the table. Or a danger to your retirement fund, you parasitic vulture? I'd like to call Dr. Benedict Vance to the stand," Whitmore announced like he was introducing royalty. My brother stood up from the front row with that particular grace that golden children develop from a lifetime of being told they're special. Every movement was calculated, every expression rehearsed. He'd been performing his entire life, and this was just another stage, another audience to convince that he was the hero of the story. As he walked to the witness stand, his white coat caught the light from the tall windows, practically glowing like he was some kind of medical angel sent to save his poor, delusional sister. He raised his right hand to be sworn in, and I watched his face arrange itself into an expression of concerned reluctance, like testifying against me was breaking his heart when we both knew the truth. This was the moment he'd been waiting for since grandfather's will was read 3 months ago. "Dr. Vance," Whitmore began once Benedict was settled in the chair, "can you describe your relationship with your sister Octavia?" Benedict's voice was warm, professional, the bedside manner he used with patients who were paying him thousands of dollars to fix their faces. "Octavia and I have always been close, or at least I thought we were. Growing up, I tried to look out for her. She was the sensitive one, you know? The artistic type. Brilliant in her own way, but fragile. Emotionally fragile. I always worried about her." Fragile. The word landed in the courtroom like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples of implication in every direction. Poor fragile Octavia. Poor broken bird who can't handle the real world. "When did you first become concerned about her mental health?" Whitmore asked, feeding him the question like they'd rehearsed it 100 times. Which they probably had. Benedict sighed, a sound so perfectly calibrated to express reluctant honesty that I almost applauded. "After our grandfather's will was read. The inheritance was unexpected for all of us, but for Octavia, it seemed to trigger something. She became paranoid almost overnight. Started accusing family members of trying to take advantage of her. Claimed we were plotting against her. She refused to discuss anything practical about the estate, wouldn't take our calls, locked herself in that converted carriage house she calls a studio, and basically cut off all contact with the people who love her most." He leaned forward, his expression radiating earnest concern. "Your Honor, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a plastic surgeon. But I've worked in medicine long enough to recognize warning signs. My sister was exhibiting classic symptoms of a paranoid episode, possibly even the early stages of a psychotic break. Grandiosity, believing she alone understood grandfather's wishes. Paranoia, thinking everyone was conspiring against her. Social isolation, cutting off family and friends. And then there was the impulsive decision-making." "What decision are you referring to?" Whitmore prompted. She announced, completely out of nowhere, that she was going to turn our family's ancestral estate into some kind of sanctuary for strangers. Women she didn't know. People with no connection to our family or our history. She wanted to essentially give away a $15 million property to create, and I quote, "a healing space for women recovering from financial and emotional abuse." He shook his head like the very idea pained him. "Your Honor, that's our grandfather's legacy she's talking about destroying. A home that's been in our family for 3 generations. And she wanted to hand it over to complete strangers based on some idealistic fantasy that frankly sounded more like a manic delusion than a rational business plan." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. Everything he was saying was technically true. I had inherited the estate. I had cut off contact. I had announced my intention to create a sanctuary. But the way he framed it, the spin he put on every fact, transformed my deliberate choices into symptoms of insanity. That's the thing about gaslighting at this level. It doesn't require lies. Just strategic truths delivered with the right tone. Karen shifted beside me, her pen moving across her legal pad, so fast it looked like she was sketching a murder scene. Which, in a way, she was. She glanced at me with one eyebrow slightly raised. "You okay?" I gave her the tiniest nod. I was more than okay. I was waiting for them to finish building their case, so I could burn it to the ground. "Dr. Vance," Whitmore continued, his voice dropping into a register of practice sympathy, "can you walk the court through the events of March 15th? The incident that prompted this legal action." Benedict took a deep breath like the memory physically pained him. Perfect. So perfect. I've been trying to reach Octavia for several days with no response. No return calls. No texts. Nothing. I was genuinely worried about her safety, so I drove to her studio that afternoon to check on her in person. When I arrived, I found the door unlocked, which was unusual. Octavia is normally very security conscious about her workspace. He paused, his hands gripping the edge of the witness stand. I walked inside, and what I saw was horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. It looked like a crime scene. The painting she'd been working on, a restoration of our grandfather's portrait that she'd spent 6 months on, was completely destroyed, slashed to ribbons. The canvas was hanging in shreds, and there was red paint everywhere, splattered across the walls, the floor, pooled on the ground. It looked like someone had been murdered in there. And where was your sister during this? Whitmore asked, standing in the middle of the destruction, holding a palette knife, completely dissociated from reality. I called her name multiple times. I walked right up to her. She didn't respond, didn't acknowledge I was there. Her eyes were open, but it was like nobody was home, like she'd completely left her body. Benedict's voice cracked slightly. That's when I knew this was serious. That's when I knew my sister needed immediate professional intervention. I called 911 and reported a mental health crisis. I stayed with her, trying to keep her calm, trying to prevent her from hurting herself with that knife she was holding until the authorities arrived. The lie was so smooth, so flawlessly delivered, wrapped in just enough truth to make it believable, that if I hadn't lived through what actually happened, if I hadn't been there when he destroyed that painting himself, I might have believed him. Hell, I probably would have believed him. Benedict had always been good at this, at taking reality and bending it just enough to make himself the hero and me the problem. That's what golden children learn to do. They learn to rewrite history in real time, to reshape narratives until everyone forgets what actually happened and only remembers the story they tell. When the police officers arrived, Benedict continued. Octavia was more responsive. She let them take her into custody without resistance, which I think was just exhaustion from whatever episode she'd been through. But the psychiatric hold was absolutely necessary. She needed professional evaluation from people qualified to assess her mental state. Whitmore nodded solemnly. Dr. Vance, in your medical opinion, even though you're not a psychiatrist, based on what you witnessed that day and your sister's behavior over the preceding months, do you believe she's currently capable of managing a $15 million estate and making sound decisions regarding that property? Benedict looked directly at me when he answered, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not guilt, not regret, something colder. Calculation. No, Your Honor, I don't. I believe my sister is currently experiencing a severe mental health crisis that makes her a danger to herself and potentially to others. The violent destruction of property, the paranoid accusations against family members who only want to help her, the social isolation, the grandiose plans that make no financial sense, all of this points to someone who is not in their right mind. She needs help. She needs structure. She needs people who love her to make decisions on her behalf until she's stable enough to make them herself. Thank you, Dr. Vance, Whitmore said, his voice heavy with false sympathy. He turned to Judge Brennan. Your Honor, I believe the evidence is clear and compelling. Miss Vance is not competent to manage her inheritance. We're asking the court to grant an emergency conservatorship with her parents, Genevieve and Alistair Vance, serving as conservators. This isn't about taking anything from her. This is about protecting her from herself and preserving her grandfather's legacy until she's well enough to appreciate it. Judge Brennan looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, Miss Chun, do you wish to cross-examine this witness? Karen stood up, and I could see the controlled fury radiating from her like heat from asphalt in summer. Just a few questions, Your Honor. She walked toward Benedict with the careful steps of someone approaching a dangerous animal. Dr. Vance, you testified that you called 911 because you witnessed your sister having what you believed to be a psychotic episode. Is that correct? Yes, Benedict said. And you stated that she was holding a palette knife and you were concerned she might hurt herself? That's correct. But you didn't actually witness her destroying the painting, did you? When you arrived, the damage was already done. You have no direct knowledge of who destroyed that painting or when it was destroyed. Isn't that true? Benedict's jaw tightened slightly. She was the only one there. She was holding the knife. Who else could have done it? We'll get to that, Karen said, her voice sharp as a scalpel. You also testified that your sister was completely dissociated, that she didn't respond when you called her name, that she didn't acknowledge your presence. But the police report, which I have right here, states that when officers arrived on scene, Miss Vance was calm, cooperative, and responsive to all commands. She didn't resist arrest. She didn't argue. She voluntarily accompanied them to the facility for evaluation. Does that sound like someone in the grips of a violent psychotic episode to you, Dr. Vance? People in crisis can present differently to authority figures, Benedict said smoothly. She might have been more compliant with uniformed officers than she was with me. Or, Karen said, letting the word hang in the air, she might have been exactly as calm and rational with you as she was with them, and you called 911 anyway because you wanted her removed from that property for reasons that had nothing to do with her mental health and everything to do with that $15 million inheritance. Objection. Whitmore was on his feet. Your Honor, counsel is engaging in speculation without any evidence to support these accusations. Sustained, Judge Brennan said, but he was looking at Benedict with new interest. Miss Chen, do you have evidence to support that line of questioning? I do, Your Honor, Karen said, but I'd prefer to present it during our defense rather than during cross-examination. However, I do have one more question for this witness. She turned back to Benedict. Dr. Vance, you've testified that your sister became paranoid and delusional after inheriting the estate. But isn't it true that you personally owe over $200,000 in gambling debts? And isn't it true that you expected to inherit at least half of your grandfather's estate and were planning to use that money to pay off those debts? And isn't it further true that when you learned your sister inherited everything and you got nothing, you and your parents immediately began pressuring her to sell the property so you could access those funds? The courtroom went dead silent. Benedict's face had gone white, then red, then white again. I don't see how my personal finances are relevant to my sister's mental health, he said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. They're relevant because they establish motive, Karen said. Motive for a family to systematically gaslight and frame a woman who stood between them and a fortune they believed they deserved. No further questions, Your Honor. She walked back to our table, and I saw the smallest smile playing at the corner of her mouth. First blood. Benedict stepped down from the witness stand looking significantly less composed than when he'd taken it, and I watched him return to his seat beside our parents. My mother reached out and squeezed his hand in a gesture of support and solidarity. They still looked like a united front, the loving family trying to save their wayward daughter. But cracks were starting to show. Judge Brennan looked at Whitmore. Do you have additional witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Genevieve Vance to the stand. And that's when my mother stood up to perform the role she'd been rehearsing her entire life, the heartbroken mother whose ungrateful daughter had lost her mind. But what she didn't know was that I'd recorded every word of her confession 3 nights ago when she thought I was too drugged to hear her. And in about 20 minutes, that recording was going to play in this courtroom, and her perfect mask was going to shatter into 1,000 pieces. My mother walked to the witness stand like she was gliding down a red carpet at a charity gala, every movement choreographed for maximum sympathetic impact. She wore a navy dress so simple it screamed expensive, pearls at her throat that had belonged to her grandmother, her silver hair pulled back in a way that made her look both elegant and fragile. This was Genevieve Vance in her element, performing vulnerability for an audience that didn't know her well enough to see through it. As she raised her right hand to be sworn in, I noticed her hands were shaking slightly, just enough to seem genuine. Just enough to make the judge think she was a mother on the edge of collapse, holding herself together through sheer force of maternal love. It was brilliant, really. If I didn't know her, if I hadn't spent 32 years watching her perform emotion like it was a second language, I might have been moved. Mrs. Vance, Whitmore began, his voice dropping into that gentle register menus when they're talking to women they think need protecting. I know this must be incredibly difficult for you. Please take your time. My mother's voice came out soft and trembling, like she was fighting back tears with every word. Thank you. This is difficult. Octavia is my daughter. I carried her for 9 months. I held her when she was born. I've loved her every single day of her life. But right now, I'm watching her destroy herself, and I feel completely helpless to stop it. She dabbed at her eyes with that silk handkerchief, and I wondered if she'd practiced that gesture in the mirror. Probably. My mother never did anything without rehearsal. Can you describe Octavia's behavior after your father's will was read? Whitmore asked. She changed overnight. Completely. It was like someone had replaced my daughter with a stranger wearing her face. My mother's voice broke slightly. She stopped returning our phone calls, stopped answering texts. When we did manage to see her, she was hostile, angry. She said terrible things, accused us of always favoring Benedict, claimed we'd treated her like a scapegoat her entire childhood. None of it was true. We love both our children equally. We always have. I felt Karen's hand briefly touch my arm under the table. A silent reminder. Stay calm. Don't react. Let her dig her own grave. She told us she was going to turn the estate into a sanctuary for strangers. My mother continued, her voice rising with what sounded like genuine distress. Women she'd never met. People with no connection to our family. She wanted to fill our father's home, a place that held generations of family history, with strangers. When we tried to discuss it reasonably, tried to suggest alternatives that might honor both her vision and our family's legacy, she accused us of trying to manipulate her. She looked directly at me, and the performance was flawless. Wounded love, maternal concern, confusion at how her own child could hurt her so deeply. She said we'd never really loved her, that we only saw her as a tool to make Benedict look better, that we'd spent her entire childhood making her feel worthless. Your Honor, I don't know where these delusions came from. I've spent 32 years trying to be a good mother to both my children. To hear her say these things, to watch her rewrite our entire family history into some kind of abuse narrative, it's been devastating. Mrs. Vance, Whitmore said softly, after the incident on March 15th, after Octavia was taken into custody for psychiatric evaluation, what did you and your husband do? My mother took a shaky breath that would have earned her an Oscar nomination. We tried to see her. We went to the facility every single day. We brought her favorite books, her favorite snacks, things we thought might comfort her. But she refused to see us. She told the staff we weren't allowed to visit. She said, and I'll never forget this, she said we were the enemy and she didn't want us anywhere near her. The tears came now, sliding down her perfectly made-up face in tracks that somehow didn't smudge her mascara. That's when I knew how serious this was. That's when I realized we weren't just dealing with stress or grief over losing her grandfather. We were dealing with a genuine mental health crisis. Our daughter truly believed we were trying to hurt her. What happened after she was released from the evaluation? Whitmore prompted. We gave her a few days of space. We thought maybe she needed time to process everything. But then Alistair and I decided we had to try one more time. We had to make her see that we loved her, that we were on her side, that we only wanted to help. My mother's voice dropped to almost a whisper. We went to her studio. I made her favorite casserole, the one with the chicken and the wild rice that she used to ask for on her birthday when she was little. We brought it to her as a peace offering. And we apologized. What did you apologize for? Whitmore asked. For not believing her sooner, when she said Benedict had concerns about her mental state. For not realizing how much she was struggling. For any way we might have failed her as parents, even though we'd done our best. We got down on our knees on that gravel path outside her studio, and we begged her to give us another chance. We asked her to come to dinner, just family, so we could talk things through properly. She paused, building the moment. And she said yes. She agreed to come. We were so hopeful. We thought we'd finally gotten through to her, that our daughter was coming back to us. I wanted to slow clap, wanted to stand up and give her a standing ovation for this performance. The trembling voice. The strategic tears. The way she made their manipulations sound like love. This was masterclass gaslighting, and I was watching a professional at work. We planned a family dinner for that Sunday, my mother continued. We invited Benedict because we wanted to show Octavia that despite everything, we were still a family. We could still come together. We could still love each other through difficult times. I spent all day cooking. I set the table with our best china. I wanted everything to be perfect, to show her how much she mattered to us. Her expression shifted, darkening like storm clouds rolling in. But when she arrived, something was wrong. She was cold, distant. She barely spoke during dinner, barely touched her food. She kept looking at us with these suspicious eyes, like she was waiting for us to attack her or trick her somehow. The whole evening was tense and uncomfortable, nothing like the reconciliation we'd hoped for. And then what happened? Whitmore asked, though I could tell from his tone he already knew the answer. My mother's voice hardened slightly, the wounded mother giving way to something more accusatory. After dinner, we found out she'd been wearing a hidden camera the entire time. She'd secretly recorded our private family conversation without our knowledge or permission. She'd come into our home pretending to reconcile while actually treating us like criminals who needed to be documented and monitored. She looked at Judge Brennan directly. Your Honor, that's when I knew we'd truly lost her. That's when I realized my daughter doesn't see us as family anymore. She sees us as enemies. She doesn't trust us. She doesn't love us. And I'm terrified of what she might do next, to herself or to others, if someone doesn't intervene and get her the help she desperately needs. The tears came faster now, more theatrical. We're not asking for this conservatorship to control her or take anything from her. We're asking because we love her, because she's our daughter, and we can't just stand by and watch her destroy herself. Please, Your Honor, please let us help her before it's too late. Whitmore let the moment breathe, let the image of the devastated mother fill every corner of the courtroom. Then he said quietly, reverently, "No further questions, Your Honor." Judge Brennan looked at Karen. "Miss Jen." Karen stood up slowly, and I could see her mind working behind her eyes like gears in a precision machine. "Mrs. Vance," she began, her voice completely neutral, "you testified that you love both your children equally. Is that your sworn testimony?" "Yes," my mother said, composing herself. "Then can you explain to this court why, according to bank records we've obtained, in the past 15 years you've given Benedict over $300,000 in direct financial support, loans, and gifts, while giving Octavia a total of $0? The number hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. My mother blinked rapidly. "I don't have those specific figures in front of me, but Benedict had financial needs. He was establishing his medical practice, medical school debt, office space, equipment. Those things require significant capital. And Octavia had $50,000 in art school debt," Karen said. "But you didn't help with that, did you?" "Octavia wanted to be independent," my mother said carefully. "She was proud. She refused our help." "Or you never offered it," Karen said. "Mrs. Vance, you testified that Octavia's accusations about being treated as a scapegoat were delusions, products of mental illness. But isn't it true that when Benedict crashed his car in high school driving drunk, you told family members it was because Octavia had upset him with her drama right before he left the house?" "That was 15 years ago," my mother said, her voice cooling. "I don't remember the specifics of every conversation. And when Benedict failed his first medical board examination, didn't you explain it to your bridge club by saying Octavia had been distracting him with her constant need for attention?" Karen pressed. "I was trying to support my son during a difficult time. By blaming your daughter," Karen said flatly. "Mrs. Vance, I'm going to ask you a very specific question about the dinner you just described. The reconciliation dinner that you claim was ruined by Octavia's paranoid behavior. What did you serve her to drink that evening?" My mother's face changed. Just slightly. Just enough that if you weren't watching for it, you'd miss it. The mask slipped for half a second before she caught it and pulled it back into place. "I don't remember, specifically. Wine, I think. We always have wine with dinner." "What kind of wine?" Karen asked. "Bordeaux, perhaps?" Something red? Possibly, my mother said, and her voice had gone careful. Guarded. Let me refresh your memory, Karen said, pulling a document from her folder with theatrical precision. This is a toxicology report from a sample taken from the wine glass Octavia used that evening. A sample she had the foresight to preserve because she suspected something wasn't right. This report shows the presence of lorazepam, a sedative commonly prescribed for anxiety. Were you aware, Mrs. Vance, that your daughter's drink had been drugged? The courtroom went absolutely silent. You could hear the air conditioning hum. You could hear someone's watch ticking 3 rows back. You could hear my mother's sharp intake of breath. I don't know anything about that, my mother said, but her voice shook and it wasn't performance anymore. This was real fear. Mrs. Vance, do you have a prescription for lorazepam?
Karen asked.
I have a prescription for anxiety. Yes, but I didn't put anything in Octavia's wine. I would never do something like that. I'm her mother. But someone did, Karen said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. Someone at that family dinner, that intimate gathering of just you, your husband, Benedict, and Octavia, someone drugged her drink with a sedative. And you're asking this court to grant that same family, the family that drugged her, control over her life, her assets, and her medical decisions. Do you understand how that looks, Mrs. Vance? Objection. Whitmore was on his feet, his smooth composure finally cracking. Your Honor, counsel is making serious criminal allegations without proof of who administered the substance, or when, or under what circumstances. Your Honor, Karen said calmly, I have proof. Video and audio proof. But as I stated earlier, I'd prefer to present it as part of our defense rather than piecemeal during cross-examination. However, I think the court deserves to know that there is documented evidence of what happened at that dinner, and it tells a very different story than the one Mrs. Vance just told under oath. Judge Brennan leaned forward, his tired eyes suddenly very alert. Miss Chun, are you telling me you have evidence that contradicts this witness's testimony? I'm telling you we have evidence that proves this witness committed perjury in this courtroom approximately 5 minutes ago, Your Honor. But again, I'd like to present it in context during our defense. Objection. Whitmore's voice had risen. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. If counsel has evidence of perjury, she needs to present it now so we can address it. I agree, Judge Brennan said. Miss Chun, if you're going to accuse a witness of perjury, you need to back that up.
Now. Karen looked at me.
I nodded. This was it. The moment we'd been building toward for 3 months. Your Honor, Karen said, I'd like to submit Exhibit A. A video recording taken by Miss Vance on the evening of the dinner in question. The recording that Mrs. Vance characterized as paranoid surveillance was actually self-defense. Miss Vance wore that camera because she suspected, correctly as it turns out, that her family was planning something. The video shows the entire dinner from start to finish. It shows Mr. and Mrs. Vance drugging Octavia's wine. It shows them discussing their plan to have her declared incompetent. And it shows them admitting on camera that they've been systematically gaslighting her for months to make her seem unstable. My mother had gone white as chalk. Whitmore looked like he'd been punched. Benedict was half standing in his seat, his face a mask of panic. Your Honor, Whitmore said, his voice desperate now. We'd need time to authenticate this alleged recording. We'd need to verify it hasn't been doctored or edited. This is ambush tactics, and it's completely inappropriate. I have the original file with metadata showing date, time, and location, Karen said. I have 3 independent forensic analysts who've examined it and certified it's authentic and unedited. And I have Mrs. Vance's own words, recorded in high definition, admitting to conspiracy to commit fraud. Judge Brennan sat back in his chair. I'm going to view this recording. In chambers.
Right now.
This hearing is in recess for 45 minutes. Bailiff, clear the courtroom. As people started filing out, I looked across the aisle at my family. My mother was crying, and these weren't performance tears. These were real. These were the tears of someone who'd just realized they'd walked into a trap, and there was no way out. Benedict was arguing with Whitmore in urgent whispers, his smooth facade completely shattered. And my father sat stone still, staring straight ahead, his prosecutor's mind probably already calculating the criminal charges they were facing. Karen leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. More than okay. For the first time in 3 months since this nightmare started, I felt like I could breathe. They'd underestimated me. They'd thought I was fragile, broken, easy to manipulate. They'd thought the scapegoat would just accept a role and hand over the inheritance like a good little victim. They'd forgotten that I'd spent my entire life watching them perform, learning their tactics, understanding their strategies. And they'd never considered that the quiet daughter, the one they dismissed and diminished for 32 years, might be 10 steps ahead of them the entire time. Judge Brennan disappeared into his chambers with a video file, and I sat there in the nearly empty courtroom, waiting. 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, he'd see everything. He'd hear my father's voice saying, once she's sedated, we'll have the notary standing by. He'd hear my mother saying, we just need her to sign the power of attorney, and then we can have her committed long-term. He'd hear Benedict saying, I already destroyed the painting and framed her once. If we need to do it again to prove she's unstable, I will. 45 minutes. And then everything would change. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was that Judge Brennan was about to ask me one question that would force me to explain the one thing I'd been avoiding. Why I let them do all of this in the first place. Why I didn't fight back sooner. Why I let myself be arrested, evaluated, and humiliated before finally revealing I had evidence all along. And that answer was going to hurt more than anything my family had done to me. 45 minutes felt like 45 years. I sat in that courtroom with Karen beside me, both of us silent, both of us waiting for Judge Brennan to emerge from his chambers after watching the video that would either vindicate me completely or somehow, impossibly, be dismissed as insufficient evidence. The courtroom had cleared except for us. My family and their lawyer huddled on the opposite side like conspirators who just realized their conspiracy had been recorded in 4K resolution, and a few court staff members who pretended not to be watching the drama unfold. My mother hadn't stopped crying since the recess was called. Real tears this time, streaming down her face and ruining her carefully applied makeup, leaving mascara tracks that made her look less like a grieving mother and more like someone who'd just been caught committing a felony. She kept looking at my father with desperate eyes, silently asking him to fix this the way he'd fixed everything else in their lives. But my father was staring at the wall with the blank expression of a man calculating prison sentences in his head. Benedict was the only one still trying to maintain composure, sitting ramrod straight in his seat, but I could see his leg bouncing under the table, that nervous tic he'd had since childhood that only appeared when he was genuinely scared. Good. Let him be scared. Let him feel a fraction of the terror I'd felt when I walked into my studio and found my grandfather's portrait destroyed, when police lights flashed through my windows, when I spent 72 hours in psychiatric hold being evaluated like a lab specimen. Whitmore kept checking his phone, probably researching legal precedents for clients who'd committed perjury and conspiracy in front of a judge, probably wondering if he could withdraw from the case before the criminal charges started flying. Karen reached over and squeezed my hand briefly. No matter what happens in there, you did the right thing. You protected yourself. You gathered evidence. You stayed rational when they were trying to make you seem crazy. That takes incredible strength. I just want it to be over, I whispered. I want them out of my life. Permanently. After the judge sees that video, they will be, Karen said. One way or another, this ends today. The door to Judge Brennan's chambers opened, and he walked out carrying a tablet, his face completely unreadable. He settled into his chair, arranged some papers in front of him, and then looked directly at me with an expression that made my stomach drop. Not anger. Not sympathy. Something else. Something I couldn't quite identify. I've reviewed the video evidence submitted by the defense, he said, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. All 1 hour and 47 minutes of it. And I have questions. Serious questions. Here it comes, I thought. The moment of truth. Mr. Whitmore, does your client wish to modify any of her previous testimony in light of this evidence? Judge Brennan asked. Whitmore stood up slowly. Your Honor, my client maintains that her testimony was given in good faith based on her understanding of events. However, we would request time to review the video evidence ourselves before making any further statements. That's a no then, Judge Brennan said flatly. Mrs. Vance, I'm going to ask you one more time, under oath, with the full understanding that perjury in this courtroom will result in criminal prosecution. Did you or did you not place lorazepam in your daughter's wine at the dinner on the evening in question? My mother looked at Whitmore, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Don't answer. Invoke your Fifth Amendment rights. But my mother wasn't a lawyer. She was a society woman who'd spent her entire life caring about appearances, and even now, even facing criminal charges, she cared more about how this looked than about protecting herself legally. I did, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I put 2 crushed lorazepam tablets in her wine. But we were trying to help her. She was so agitated, so paranoid. We thought if we could just calm her down, get her to relax, she'd be more open to listening to reason. You drugged her, Judge Brennan said, his voice hard as granite. You drugged your own daughter without her knowledge or consent in your own home, with the intention of getting her to sign legal documents while under the influence of sedatives. Do you understand that's not helping? That's assault? That's conspiracy to commit fraud? My mother started crying harder. We were desperate. We didn't know what else to do. Benedict said she was going to destroy herself, destroy the family legacy, and we just wanted to protect her from making terrible decisions. By taking away her ability to make decisions at all, Judge Brennan said. By chemically impairing her and then presenting her with legal documents to sign. Mrs. Vance, that's not protection. That's predation. He turned to my father. Mr. Vance, you were a district attorney for 2 decades. You prosecuted people for doing exactly what you did to your daughter.
You know the law.
You know the penalties. And you did it anyway. Do you have anything to say? My father finally looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that looked like shame. Your Honor, I love my daughter. Everything we did because we believed she wasn't capable of managing the inheritance responsibly. We believed she was having a mental health crisis, and we were trying to intervene before she destroyed everything her grandfather built. By destroying her, Judge Brennan said, by systematically undermining her credibility, framing her for crimes she didn't commit, drugging her, and attempting to force her to sign away her legal rights. Mr. Vance, you didn't intervene in a mental health crisis. You created one. You gaslight your own daughter to the point where she couldn't trust her own perception of reality, and then you tried to use that confusion as proof she was incompetent. He looked at Benedict. Dr. Vance, stand up. Benedict stood slowly, his face pale. You destroyed your sister's property and filed a false police report. You lied to law enforcement about witnessing a mental health crisis. You used your medical credentials to lend credibility to fabricated symptoms. And according to the video evidence, you explicitly stated, and I quote, I already destroyed the painting and framed her once. If we need to do it again to prove she's unstable, I will. Is that an accurate quote? Benedict opened his mouth, then closed it. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, he finally said. Smart, Judge Brennan said. Because everything I just described constitutes multiple felonies. Filing false reports, destruction of property, conspiracy to commit fraud. And there's one more thing that video revealed that I want to address. He looked back at me, and that unreadable expression was back. Miss Vance, I need you to answer a question for me, and I need you to be completely honest.
Can you do that?
Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The video shows that your family drugged you, discussed having you declared incompetent, and planned to force you to sign documents while sedated. But the video also shows something else. It shows you pretending to be more impaired than you actually were. It shows you deliberately slurring your words and acting confused while remaining fully conscious and aware. You weren't just recording them. You were performing for them. You were giving them exactly what they wanted, so they'd incriminate themselves on camera. Is that correct? The courtroom went completely silent. Karen stiffened beside me. This was the question I'd been dreading. the one complication in our otherwise perfect evidence. Yes, Your Honor, I said. That's correct. So you knew you were being drugged, you recognized the symptoms, and instead of leaving or calling for help, you stayed and pretended to be sedated while they discussed committing fraud. Why? Judge Brennan asked. Because I needed evidence that would be undeniable, I said. Your Honor, my family has been gaslighting me my entire life, making me doubt my own perceptions, making me think I was too sensitive, too emotional, too unstable to trust my own judgment. When Benedict destroyed my grandfather's painting and framed me for it, when police took me into custody based on his lies, when I spent 72 hours in psychiatric hold, I knew that if I told anyone what was really happening, they wouldn't believe me. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Benedict is a respected surgeon. My parents are pillars of the community. My father was a district attorney, and I'm just an artist who lives in a converted carriage house. If I accused them of conspiracy without proof, it would sound exactly like the paranoid delusions they were claiming I had. So I needed evidence. Not just evidence, but evidence so clear and undeniable that no one could dismiss it or explain it away. So you let yourself be drugged, Judge Brennan said. I monitored myself carefully. I corrected. I knew lorazepam's effects. I knew the dosage based on the taste and the onset of symptoms. I made sure I stayed conscious and aware while appearing impaired. And I recorded everything they said while they thought I couldn't hear them or wouldn't remember. That's incredibly dangerous, Judge Brennan said. What if you'd miscalculated the dose? What if they'd given you more than you expected? Then I would have had even more evidence of their criminal intent, I said. Your Honor, I understand this might seem manipulative or calculated, but I was fighting for my life, my freedom, my inheritance, my sanity in a very literal sense. They were trying to have me declared incompetent and locked away so they could steal everything my grandfather left me. I couldn't fight them with just my word against theirs. I needed proof. Judge Brennan sat back in his chair, studying me. Miss Vance, I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. In my 30 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of family disputes. I've seen greed do terrible things to people who claim to love each other. But I've never seen someone as methodical and strategic as you've been in defending themselves. The recording from your studio that captured your brother destroying the painting. The camera you wore to dinner. The way you handled the psychiatric evaluation, staying calm and rational despite being falsely accused. The toxicology sample you preserved. You didn't just defend yourself. You built a prosecutable case. I had good advice, I said, glancing at Karen. My lawyer helped me understand what kind of evidence would actually hold up in court versus what would just be my word against theirs. But you did this before you hired Miss Chen, didn't you? Judge Brennan said. The studio recording happened in March. You didn't retain counsel until April, which means you were thinking like a lawyer before you had a lawyer. Why? The question hung in the air, and I realized what he was really asking. He was asking if I'd planned all of this. If I'd somehow engineered the entire situation to entrap my family. If I was the manipulator they claimed I was, just smarter about it. Your Honor, I installed security cameras in my studio after someone broke in 6 months ago and stole some of my equipment, I said carefully. That was a legitimate security measure that had nothing to do with my family. The cameras just happened to be there when Benedict destroyed the painting. As for the dinner, I wore a camera because my parents' sudden reconciliation felt wrong. Too convenient. Too perfectly timed. I trusted my instincts, and my instincts were right. And the psychiatric hold? How did you know to stay so calm during that? Because I'd been in therapy for 10 years, I said. Real therapy, not the kind my mother claimed I refused. I'd been working with a therapist on setting boundaries with my family, on recognizing gaslighting behaviors, on trusting my own perceptions. When Benedict had me taken into custody, my therapist's voice was in my head telling me, don't give them what they want. Don't perform the role they've written for you.
Stay calm.
Stay rational. Let the professionals evaluate you fairly. So that's what I did. Judge Brennan nodded slowly. Miss Vance, I'm satisfied that your actions, while unusual, were defensive rather than predatory. You were protecting yourself from a family that was actively trying to harm you. However, I want to be very clear about something. The evidence you've gathered doesn't just support your case for dismissing this conservatorship petition. It supports criminal charges against all three petitioners. He looked at my family, Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Dr. Vance, based on the evidence presented today, including video documentation and sworn testimony. I am denying the petition for conservatorship. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation into the following charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, assault by drugging, filing false police reports, destruction of property, and perjury. Bailiff, please take the three petitioners into custody pending arraignment. The courtroom erupted. My mother started screaming, actually screaming, all pretense of dignity abandoned.
No. Please.
We're her parents. We love her. We were trying to help. Benedict tried to run. Actually tried to bolt for the door like he was in an action movie. The bailiff caught him before he made it 3 steps, tackling him to the ground in a scene so undignified, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. My father simply stood up and held out his wrists for the handcuffs, his face completely blank, already retreating into that prosecutor mindset where emotion was a liability and strategic thinking was survival. As they were being let out, my mother looked at me one last time. Not with love, not with regret, but with pure, undiluted hatred. You did this, she hissed. You destroyed this family. You turned us against each other. This is all your fault. And even then, even in handcuffs being arrested for multiple felonies, she couldn't take responsibility, couldn't admit what they'd done, couldn't see that they'd destroyed themselves by choosing greed over love, manipulation over honesty, theft over integrity. No, Mom, I said quietly. You did this. All of it. I just recorded it. The courtroom doors closed behind them, and suddenly it was just me, Karen, a few stunned court staff members, and the weight of everything that had just happened. Judge Brennan looked at me. Miss Vance, are you all right? I don't know, I said honestly. I think I will be, eventually. But right now I just feel empty. That's normal, he said, his voice gentle now that the legal proceedings were over. You just watched your entire family get arrested. That's traumatic even when they deserve it. I'm going to recommend you speak with a counselor, someone who specializes in family trauma and recovery. The court can provide referrals if needed. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. One more thing, he said. Your grandfather's will, the estate, everything they tried to take from you. It's yours. Legally, unambiguously, permanently yours. And based on what I've seen today, I think your grandfather knew exactly what he was doing when he left it all to you. He knew his family. He knew what they were capable of. And he knew you were the only one with the strength and integrity to handle that inheritance properly. Tears stung my eyes for the first time all day. He told me once that I saw beauty where others saw utility, that I created where others consumed. I didn't understand what he meant until the will reading. He was giving you the resources to keep creating, Judge Brennan said, and to help others do the same. I hope you still plan to turn that estate into a sanctuary. I do, I said. More than ever. Women who've been gaslighted by their families, who've been told they're crazy or unstable or incapable, they need a place to heal. They need space to remember who they are when nobody's telling them who they should be. Then I look forward to reading about it, Judge Brennan said. This court is adjourned. As I walked out of that courthouse into the humid Savannah afternoon, I realized something profound. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn my family's love, trying to be good enough, quiet enough, small enough to deserve their affection. And all I needed to do was stop trying, stop performing, stop accepting their version of reality, and start trusting my own. But the war wasn't over, because in 3 weeks, my family would be arraigned, and I'd have to decide whether to testify against them or let the evidence speak for itself. Either way, there was no going back to being the scapegoat. That girl was dead, and I'd killed her myself. 3 weeks later, I stood in the same courthouse where my family had tried to destroy me, except this time, I wasn't the defendant. I was the witness, the victim, the person who'd survived their coordinated attack and lived to tell about it. The district attorney's office had moved fast. Faster than I expected. Within 48 hours of my family's arrest, prosecutors had reviewed all the evidence, interviewed me for 6 hours, and filed formal charges against all 3 of them. Conspiracy to commit fraud, assault with a controlled substance, filing false police reports, perjury, and destruction of property. The arraignment was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, and the prosecutor, a woman named Diana Torres who had the kind of sharp intelligence that reminded me of Karen, had called me the night before to prepare me. "They're going to plead not guilty," she'd said over the phone. "All 3 of them. Their lawyers are already building a defense based on the idea that they genuinely believed you were mentally unstable and were acting in what they thought were your best interests. They're going to paint themselves as concerned family members who made mistakes out of love, not criminals who conspired to commit fraud." "Will that work?" I'd asked, my stomach nodding. "Not with the evidence we have," Diana said. "But it might get them a plea deal instead of a trial. Which means you need to be prepared for the possibility that they won't spend significant time in prison. White-collar crime, first offenders, prominent family, it all adds up to potential leniency." "I don't care about prison," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I just want them out of my life.
Permanently.
Legally. I want a restraining order that keeps them away from me and the estate forever." "That we can definitely do," Diana said. "Regardless of how the criminal case shakes out, we'll get you protection orders that will keep them at a distance. But, Octavia, I need to ask you something. Are you prepared to testify if this goes to trial? Because your family's lawyers are going to come at you hard. They're going to try to paint you as the manipulator, the one who entrapped them, the daughter who set up her own family to steal an inheritance you didn't deserve." "Let them try," I said. "I have recordings. I have evidence. I have the truth." "Truth and perception aren't always the same thing in a courtroom," Diana warned. "But I believe you. And I believe we can win this. I just need you to be ready for how ugly it might get." So here I was, sitting in the gallery waiting for the arraignment to begin, watching as my family was led into the courtroom in street clothes, not the orange jumpsuits I'd half expected. They'd been released on bail within 72 hours of their arrest, my father calling in every favor he'd accumulated over 20 years as a district attorney, my mother leveraging her social connections, Benedict using his medical credentials and community standing to convince a judge he wasn't a flight risk. Karen sat beside me, a silent pillar of support. She'd insisted on coming even though this wasn't technically her case anymore. "I started this with you," she'd said. "I'm going to see it through." My mother looked smaller than I remembered. She'd lost weight in 3 weeks, her clothes hanging loose on her frame, her face bare of the makeup she normally wore like armor.
She didn't look at me when she entered.
Didn't acknowledge my presence at all. Just kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, like I was invisible. My father looked older. The silver in his hair seemed more pronounced, the lines around his eyes deeper. He walked with the careful dignity of a man trying to maintain composure while his entire world collapsed around him. But Benedict looked angry. His jaw was clenched so tight, I could see the muscles jumping in his cheek from across the courtroom. His eyes, when they found mine, were filled with pure hatred. Not the calculated coldness from before, but genuine rage at being caught, at being held accountable, at watching his perfect life unravel because his scapegoat sister had refused to play her assigned role. Their lawyers were expensive. I could tell by their suits, by the way they carried themselves, by the thick briefcases full of legal precedents and defense strategies. My family might be facing criminal charges, but they still had money, still had connections, still had access to the kind of legal representation that could turn felonies into misdemeanors and prison sentences into probation. Judge Brennan wasn't presiding over this arraignment. It was a different judge, a younger woman named Patricia Morrison, who looked at the case file in front of her with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many families destroy each other over money. "The state versus Genevieve Vance, Alistair Vance, and Benedict Vance," she read. "Multiple counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, assault, perjury, and related charges. How do the defendants plead?" Benedict's lawyer stood first. "Not guilty, Your Honor." My client maintains his innocence and looks forward to proving in court that his actions were motivated by genuine concern for his sister's well-being, not criminal intent. My mother's lawyer echoed the same sentiment. Then my father's. All three of them standing there in their expensive suits claiming innocence, claiming love, claiming that drugging me and trying to steal my inheritance was somehow an act of family devotion gone wrong rather than premeditated fraud. Judge Morrison looked skeptical. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the prosecution, including video and audio recordings. The state has a strong case. I'm going to strongly encourage all parties to consider plea negotiations rather than proceeding to trial. This is a family matter that's already been extensively covered by local media. A trial would only create more pain and publicity for everyone involved. My clients are prepared to go to trial if necessary, Your Honor, Benedict's lawyer said. They believe the full context of their actions will demonstrate that they were acting in good faith, even if their methods were flawed. Good faith. They were actually going to argue good faith. That they drugged me, framed me, tried to have me declared incompetent in good faith. The audacity was almost impressive. Very well, Judge Morrison said. Trial is scheduled for 8 weeks from today. Bail conditions remain in effect, with the added stipulation that none of the defendants are to have any contact, direct or indirect, with the alleged victim, Octavia Vance. No phone calls, no emails, no third-party messages. Any violation will result in immediate revocation of bail. Is that understood? All three defendants nodded. But as they were being led out of the courtroom, Benedict turned and looked directly at me. Mouthed something I couldn't quite make out but looked like, "This isn't over." Karen saw it too. "Did he just threaten you?"
I don't know, I said. Maybe. Probably.
Does it matter? It matters if he's violating the no-contact order before it's even 20 minutes old, Karen said. I'm going to mention it to Diana. Get it on the record. As the courtroom cleared, Diana Torres approached us. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said automatically. Then, more honestly, I'm exhausted. I just want this to be over. I know, Diana said, but I need to prepare you for what's coming. Benedict's lawyer already filed a motion to suppress the video evidence from the dinner, claiming it was obtained illegally because you recorded a private conversation without consent. Georgia is a one-party consent state, so legally you were allowed to record conversations you were part of, but they're going to argue you weren't truly part of the conversation because you were pretending to be sedated. That's ridiculous, Karen said. She was absolutely part of the conversation. The fact that they thought she was too impaired to understand doesn't change that she was present and conscious. I agree, Diana said. But it's going to be an issue we have to fight. They're also planning to call character witnesses who'll testify that Benedict is a respected surgeon, that your parents are pillars of the community, that you've always been difficult and unstable. They're going to put your entire childhood on trial, try to establish a pattern of you being the problem child who made up stories for attention. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. So even with video evidence of them drugging me and admitting to conspiracy, they think they can win? They think they can create enough doubt to get a plea deal that doesn't involve prison time, Diana said. And they might be right. Juries are unpredictable, especially in cases involving prominent families. We have the evidence, but we also have to overcome the fundamental resistance people have to believing that parents would deliberately harm their own child. It's easier for people to believe you're lying or exaggerating than to accept that your family is genuinely malicious. Then what do we do?
I asked.
Diana smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a prosecutor who'd just figured out her winning strategy. We use their defense against them. They want to argue they were acting out of concern for your mental health? Fine. We'll bring in your therapist to testify that you've been completely stable for years. We'll bring in the doctors who evaluated you during the psychiatric hold, who found zero evidence of mental illness. We'll bring in your art dealer who'll testify that you've been running a successful business selling paintings for the past 5 years. We'll bring in everyone who knows the real you and let them compare that reality to the fiction your family created. She pulled out a file. I've also been doing some digging into Benedict's background. Turns out your grandfather wasn't the only one who knew about his gambling debts. There are 3 casinos in Atlantic City where he's been banned for owing money. There's a loan shark who filed a police report 2 years ago claiming Benedict threatened him. There's a pattern of financial irresponsibility and desperation that supports your claim that he destroyed your painting to frame you because he needed access to that inheritance. How did you find all this? I asked. I'm very good at my job, Diana said. And I don't like people who abuse their power and position to hurt vulnerable family members. Your brother used his medical credentials to make himself seem credible while destroying your credibility. I'm going to return the favor by showing the jury exactly who he really is behind that white coat. Over the next 8 weeks, my life became a strange mixture of normal and surreal. During the day, I worked on preparing the estate for its transformation into a sanctuary. I hired contractors to renovate the main house, converting bedrooms into studios, installing professional lighting, creating spaces where women could paint and sculpt and create without judgment or limitation. I interviewed potential staff members, people who understood trauma and recovery who could provide support without control. I met with lawyers to establish the foundation's legal structure to ensure it would continue long after I was gone. And at night, I met with Diana to prepare for trial. We went over every detail of my testimony, every question the defense might ask, every way they might try to twist my words or make me seem unreliable. Diana was relentless in her preparation, playing devil's advocate, attacking me with the same strategies she expected Benedict's lawyer to use. They're going to ask why you didn't call the police when you suspected your family was planning to drug you, she said during one session. What's your answer? Because I needed proof, I said. Calling the police and saying, I think my family might try to drug me tonight, would have sounded exactly like the paranoid delusions they were claiming I had. I needed evidence that would be undeniable. They're going to ask why you didn't leave the dinner when you realized the wine was drugged. Because I needed to hear what they were planning. I needed them to incriminate themselves on camera. If I'd left, they would have just tried again, more carefully next time. They're going to ask if you feel any guilt about sending your own parents and brother to prison. That one stopped me, because the truth was complicated. I feel sad. I said finally. I feel sad that it came to this. I feel sad that they chose greed over love. I feel sad that the family I wanted to have never actually existed. But I don't feel guilty. They made their choices. They committed crimes. They tried to destroy me to get what they wanted. I didn't send them to prison. Their own actions did. Diana nodded. Good. That's honest. The jury will respect honesty more than false remorse. The media attention was worse than I expected. Local news stations ran stories with headlines like "Prominent Savannah Family Accused of Conspiracy" and "Inheritance Dispute Turns Criminal." Reporters camped outside my studio, trying to get me to comment. Social media exploded with hot takes from people who'd never met me, arguing about whether I was a victim or a manipulator, whether my family deserved prison or sympathy. I stopped reading the comments after the first week. Stopped watching the news coverage. Stopped engaging with any of it because it was all noise, all speculation from people who didn't have the facts and didn't care about the truth, just the drama. But there was one story that caught my attention. A feature in the Savannah Morning News written by a reporter who'd actually done research, who'd interviewed people who knew my family, who'd uncovered details about my grandfather that I'd never known. Richard Vance, the patriarch whose estate has become the center of a criminal case, was known among his close friends as a man who valued authenticity above all else, the article read. Those who knew him say he had no patience for social climbing or pretension. He collected art not as an investment, but because he genuinely loved beauty. And he reportedly had a complicated relationship with his own son, Alistair Vance, whom he described to friends as a man who mistakes achievement for character. The article quoted one of my grandfather's oldest friends. Richard told me years before he died that he was leaving everything to Octavia because she was the only one in the family who understood that wealth was a responsibility, not a prize. He said Alistair had raised Benedict to be entitled and Genevieve had enabled it, and he wouldn't reward that by giving them access to money they'd squander. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew it would cause conflict. But he also knew Octavia was strong enough to handle it. Reading that made me cry for the first time since the arraignment. Not sad tears, Grateful tears. Because my grandfather had seen me, had understood me, had known that leaving me the estate would start a war, and had trusted me to survive it. He'd given me more than money or property. He'd given me validation. Proof that I wasn't crazy or difficult or unstable. Proof that the scapegoat narrative my family had built around me was a lie. And he'd given me the resources to help other women who'd been told similar lies, who'd been gaslit and diminished and convinced they were the problem when they were actually the solution. The trial date approached like a storm on the horizon. Inevitable. Terrifying. Necessary. Karen kept telling me I didn't have to testify, that the video evidence was strong enough on its own. But I wanted to testify. Needed to. Because this wasn't just about legal consequences anymore. This was about standing up in a courtroom and saying out loud, on the record, in front of my family and God, and everyone, you tried to erase me. You tried to make me doubt my own sanity. You tried to steal everything I'd been given and claim it was for my own good. But I saw through you. I documented you. I survived you. And now everyone knows what you really are. 2 days before the trial was scheduled to begin, Diana called me with unexpected news. They want a deal, she said. All 3 of them. Their lawyers finally convinced them that going to trial with this much evidence against them would be catastrophic. What kind of deal? I asked. Plea to reduce charges. Conspiracy to commit fraud drops to attempted fraud. Assault drops to reckless endangerment. Perjury charge stays. In exchange, they serve no prison time, but they get 5 years probation, significant fines, mandatory counseling, and permanent restraining orders keeping them away from you and the estate. No prison time, I said flatly. They drug me, frame me, try to steal millions, and they get probation? I know it's not what you wanted, Diana said. But it's also a guarantee. If we go to trial, there's always a chance the jury doesn't convict, or convicts on lesser charges anyway. This way, you get certainty. You get the restraining orders. You get them admitting guilt on the record. And you get to move on with your life, without spending weeks in a courtroom. I had 24 hours to decide whether to accept the plea deal or roll the dice on a trial. 24 hours to choose between guaranteed protection and the possibility of real justice. And whatever I chose would determine not just my family's fate, but my own ability to finally, truly, be free of them. I sat in my studio that night staring at the ruined portrait of my grandfather, the one Benedict had destroyed to frame me, the one I'd kept exactly as he'd left it because it meant something now. It wasn't just a damaged painting anymore. It was evidence. It was proof. It was a reminder that some things are more valuable broken than repaired because the damage tells a story that restoration would erase. 24 hours to decide. Accept the plea deal and guarantee my freedom from them, or go to trial and risk everything on the possibility that a jury would see through their performance and deliver real justice. Karen had come over with Chinese takeout that neither of us was eating, both of us just pushing noodles around in containers while we talked through the options for the 100th time. There's no wrong answer here, she said. Whatever you decide, I support it. But I need you to be realistic about what a trial means. It means weeks of your life consumed by this. It means watching them perform for a jury, watching them cry, and claim they were just concerned parents. It means their lawyers tearing apart your character, bringing up every difficult moment from your childhood, and reframing it as evidence you were always unstable. I know, I said. But it also means I get to tell my story. In full. On the record. It means the world hears exactly what they did, not just the sanitized version in a plea agreement. The world already knows, Karen said gently. The video went public during the conservatorship hearing. It's been on the news. Everyone who matters already understands what happened. But they haven't been convicted, I said. A plea deal isn't the same as a jury saying, we've heard the evidence, and these people are guilty. It's them making a calculated business decision to minimize consequences. I don't want them to minimize consequences. I want them to face the full weight of what they did. Karen set down her chopsticks. Octavia, I'm going to tell you something as your lawyer and as someone who cares about you. Trials are unpredictable. I've seen cases with overwhelming evidence fall apart because one juror didn't like the victim's tone or thought the family seemed nice or couldn't believe parents would really hurt their own child. I've seen guilty people walk free because their lawyers were better storytellers than the prosecutors.
She paused.
This plea deal guarantees 5 years of protection. 5 years where they can't contact you, can't come near the estate, can't interfere with your life. 5 years where you can build the sanctuary, help the women who need it, and live without looking over your shoulder. Is the possibility of a harsher sentence for them worth risking that guaranteed safety? I looked at the portrait again, at the slashes through my grandfather's face, at the red paint that had looked so much like blood when I first saw it. What would he have wanted? I asked. Your grandfather?
Yeah.
He left me everything knowing it would start a war. He must have had some idea of how I should fight it. Karen was quiet for a moment. I never met your grandfather, but based on everything you've told me about him, I think he'd want you to choose the option that protects you and lets you do the work you're meant to do. The sanctuary. The art. The helping. I don't think he'd want you to sacrifice months of your life to punish people who will never actually understand why they're being punished. They think they're the victims, I said. Even now. My mother looked at me in that courtroom like I destroyed the family, like I was the one who'd committed crimes. They genuinely believed they were trying to help me, and I trapped them. Because that's what abusers do, Karen said. They rewrite history until they're the heroes of every story. You can't change that with a trial. You can't force them to see the truth if they're committed to their delusion. All you can do is protect yourself and move forward. I thought about that. About the reality that no verdict, no sentence, no consequence would ever make my family acknowledge what they'd done. They'd go to their graves believing they were the wronged parties, that I was the ungrateful daughter who'd betrayed them, that they'd only ever wanted what was best for me. There was no court ruling in the world that could fix that fundamental disconnect. If I take the plea deal, do I have to see them again?
I asked. No, Karen said.
The plea allocution can be done with you absent. Diana will represent your interests. They'll plead guilty to the charges. The judge will accept the plea and impose the sentence, and you never have to be in the same room with them again. Never? Not if you don't want to be, Karen confirmed. The restraining orders will be permanent. They'll be barred from the estate, from your studio, from any place you regularly work or live. If they violate it, they go to prison immediately, no questions asked. You'll be legally free of them. Legally free. The words settled into my chest like stones, heavy but grounding. Because that's what I wanted, wasn't it? Not revenge. Not punishment. Just freedom. Freedom from their manipulation. Freedom from their gaslighting. Freedom from the constant question of whether I was really the problem, really the difficult one, really the unstable daughter they'd always claimed I was. I'll take the deal, I said. Are you sure?
Karen asked.
I'm sure, I said. I don't need them to go to prison.
I just need them out of my life. Permanently.
And if 5 years of probation and permanent restraining orders accomplish that, then that's enough. Karen nodded, pulling out her phone to text Diana. I'll let her know. The plea hearing will be scheduled for early next week. It'll be quick. 30 minutes, maybe. They plead guilty. The judge accepts it, imposes the sentence and the protective orders, and it's over. And then what? I asked. Then you get to live your life, Karen said. You finish renovating the estate. You open the sanctuary. You help the women who need it. You paint. You create. You do all the things your family tried to stop you from doing. And they have to watch from a distance, knowing they lost, knowing they threw away their relationship with you for money they never got. She smiled. That's actually a better punishment than prison if you think about it. They have to live with what they did. They have to live in a community that knows they're frauds. They have to rebuild their lives with everyone knowing they drugged their own daughter and tried to steal from her. That's a life sentence, Octavia. Just a different kind. The plea hearing happened on a Wednesday morning in the same courtroom where Judge Brennan had denied the conservatorship petition. I didn't attend. Karen represented me while I stayed at the estate, working with contractors who were installing the skylights in what would become the main studio space. Diana called me when it was over. "It's done," she said. All three of them pled guilty. Your mother cried through the whole thing. Your father maintained that stoic prosecutor face. Benedict looked angry, but he said the words. The judge accepted the pleas, imposed the sentence, and issued the permanent restraining orders. You're protected, legally and permanently. How long are the restraining orders good for?
I asked.
Indefinitely, Diana said. They can petition to have them lifted after 5 years, but given the nature of the crimes, I can't imagine any judge granting that petition. For all practical purposes, they're banned from your life forever. I sat down on the floor of the half-finished studio, surrounded by sawdust and paint cans and the smell of new wood, and I let myself feel it. Relief. Enormous, overwhelming relief that it was finally over. Thank you, I said. For everything. For believing me. For fighting for me. You fought for yourself, Diana said. I just made sure the system recognized what you'd already proven. But Octavia, I want to ask you something. Are you okay? Really okay? Because winning doesn't always feel like winning, especially when it means losing your family. I lost my family a long time ago, I said. I just didn't admit it until they forced me to. This isn't loss. This is clarity. This is finally accepting reality instead of living in the fantasy that they'd eventually love me the way I needed to be loved. That's very healthy, Diana said. Have you been talking to your therapist? Twice a week, I confirmed. She's been helping me process all of this. The grief, the anger, the weird guilt I feel even though I know logically I didn't do anything wrong. It's complicated. Trauma is always complicated, Diana said. But you're doing the work. That's what matters. And if you ever need anything, if they violate the restraining order or try to contact you through third parties, you call me immediately. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. You call. I will, I promised. After we hung up, I sat there in the sawdust for a long time, just breathing, just existing in the space between ending and beginning. The war was over. The legal battle was finished. The family that had tried to erase me was legally prohibited from ever contacting me again. I should have felt triumphant, victorious. Instead, I felt empty, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that putting it down left me unbalanced, unsure of how to stand without that weight. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on destroying your family. I hope it was worth it. I stared at that message for a long moment, my heart rate spiking, then forwarded it to Diana with a note. Violation of the restraining order? She responded within minutes, forwarding to the prosecutor handling the probation. They'll investigate the source. Don't respond. Don't engage. Block the number. I blocked it. Then I blocked 3 more numbers that tried to text me over the next hour with similar messages. Friends of my parents. Family members I barely knew. People who'd bought into the narrative that I was the villain, the ungrateful daughter who'd sent her loving family to legal ruin over money. Let them think what they wanted. Let them rewrite the story to make themselves feel better about siding with abusers. I knew the truth. The courts knew the truth. And that was enough. 3 months later, the Vance Foundation for Women's Recovery and Creative Healing opened its doors. The main house had been transformed into something my grandfather would have loved. Bright, open studios filled with natural light, comfortable living spaces that felt safe rather than institutional, gardens where women could work with their hands and watch things grow. We accepted our first residents in September. 5 women ranging in age from 23 to 57, all of them recovering from some form of family trauma, all of them needing space to remember who they were before abuse told them who they should be. There was Michelle, whose husband had convinced her she was too stupid to manage money and then stolen her inheritance. There was Yolanda, whose mother had gaslight her for 30 years and was currently suing for grandparent rights to children Yolanda was protecting from the same abuse she'd endured. There was Sam, whose family had disowned her for being gay and left her homeless at 17. There was Patricia, whose brother had convinced their entire extended family she was mentally ill so he could control their father's estate. And there was Grace, 72 years old, finally leaving an abusive marriage after 50 years because she'd inherited enough money from a friend to have options. I told them my story on their first night. All of it. The will reading, the destroyed painting, the psychiatric hold, the drugged wine, the courtroom confrontation, the plea deal. I showed them the video that had saved me, the one that had been evidence in court and was now public record. I'm telling you this, I said to these 5 women sitting in the main studio, not because I want sympathy or because I think my trauma is worse than yours. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something fundamental about this place. We believe you here. We believe that your perception of your own abuse is valid. We believe that if your family calls you crazy or unstable or difficult, that's probably evidence that you're seeing clearly and they don't like it. I paused. You don't have to prove your abuse to stay here. You don't have to have video evidence or court documents or witnesses. Your word is enough. Your experience is valid. And you're safe here to process that experience however you need to, whether that's through painting or sculpture or just sitting in the garden and breathing without someone telling you you're doing it wrong. Michelle raised her hand tentatively. What if we're not good at art? What if we don't have any talent? Then you make bad art, I said. The point isn't to create masterpieces. The point is to create something that's yours. Something nobody can take from you or reinterpret or use against you. The point is to remember that you have agency, that you can take raw materials and transform them into something that didn't exist before. That's powerful. That's healing. And it has nothing to do with talent. Over the next 6 months, I watched those 5 women slowly come back to themselves. Watched Michelle paint abstract landscapes that got progressively bolder and brighter as she processed her anger. Watched Yolanda sculpt figures that started out hunched and protective and gradually opened up, reached up, stood tall. Watched Sam create collages from magazine clippings that told the story of who she was versus who her family had tried to make her. Watched Patricia write poetry that she performed at our monthly open studio nights, raw and honest and devastating. Watched Grace simply sit in the garden every morning with her coffee and her sketchbook, drawing flowers with shaking hands that got steadier every week. We accepted more residents. The foundation grew. Local media ran features about us, mostly positive, though there were always comments from people who thought we were enabling victims instead of encouraging them to reconcile with their families. I learned to ignore those comments the same way I'd learned to ignore the messages from my parents' friends. Some people would never understand that reconciliation isn't always healing. Sometimes cutting ties is the healthiest thing you can do. The 1-year anniversary of my grandfather's death fell on a cold December morning. I woke up in my studio, now fully renovated and comfortable, and I thought about him. About the risk he'd taken leaving me everything. About how he must have known it would destroy what was left of our family, but did it anyway, because he believed I was strong enough to handle the fallout. I walked to the main house and found the ruined portrait where I'd hung it in the main gallery, labeled Proof of Survival. Women stopped to look at it every day, reading the placard that explained what it was and why I'd kept it damaged. Some of them cried. Some of them stood there for long minutes just staring. One woman told me it was the most important piece in the whole building because it proved that something could be destroyed and still be valuable. That damage didn't equal worthlessness. Standing there looking at my grandfather's slashed face, I finally understood what he'd been trying to teach me all along. Beauty isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity. And sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is show your scars instead of hiding them. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Benedict. I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I'm in therapy. I'm working on myself. I understand now what I did to you, and I'm genuinely sorry. You don't have to forgive me. I just needed to say it. I stared at that message for a long time, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I stared at Benedict's text message for a full 5 minutes, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, 1,000 responses forming and dissolving in my head. The old me, the scapegoat daughter who'd spent 32 years trying to earn her family's love, wanted to respond immediately. Wanted to say, I forgive you, and thank you for apologizing, and maybe we can rebuild something. But the new me, the woman who'd survived their coordinated attack and built something meaningful from the wreckage, knew better. I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Diana Torres with a simple note. Restraining order violation? Her response came within minutes. Yes. Clear violation. Do you want to press charges or just have his probation officer issue a warning? I looked at the message again. Read the words, "I'm genuinely sorry," and tried to parse whether there was any truth in them or if this was just another manipulation, another attempt to worm his way back into my life so he could find a new angle to exploit. The thing about people like Benedict is they're very good at sounding sincere. They've spent their entire lives performing sincerity, using the right words and the right tone to get what they want. And apologies are the ultimate performance piece because they require nothing concrete, just words that might mean something or might mean nothing, depending on what follows. I typed out a response to Diana. Warning for now, but document everything. If he contacts me again, I want charges filed immediately. Then I blocked Benedict's number without responding to him. Because here's what I'd learned in the years since my grandfather's death. I didn't owe anyone my forgiveness. I didn't owe anyone my time or energy or emotional labor. And I especially didn't owe anything to someone who destroyed my property, filed false police reports, testified in court that I was mentally unstable, and actively participated in a conspiracy to drug me and steal my inheritance. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry would never be enough. Sorry was just a word people used when they wanted to feel better about themselves without actually making amends or changing their behavior. If Benedict was really sorry, if he was genuinely working on himself in therapy, then he could demonstrate that by respecting the restraining order and leaving me alone. That would be actual proof of growth. Violating the restraining order to tell me he was sorry wasn't growth. It was the same entitled behavior disguised as self-improvement. 2 days later, Diana called. Benedict's probation officer paid him a visit. Confirmed the text came from his phone. He claimed he was having a moment of weakness and just wanted to make amends. The probation officer told him in very clear terms that the restraining order doesn't have an exception for apologies, and if he contacts you again for any reason, he'll be arrested and his probation will be revoked. How did he react? I asked. According to the probation officer, he cried and said he was trying to be a better person, but you wouldn't let him, Diana said. Which tells you everything you need to know about how genuine his apology was. Real growth would mean accepting that you have the right to boundaries, and he violated them. Instead, he's making himself the victim again. Of course he is, I said. That's what he does. That's what they all do. Have you heard from your parents at all? Diana asked.
No.
But I assume I will eventually. They're quieter than Benedict, more strategic, but they'll make a move at some point. They always do. I was right. 3 months later, on the anniversary of the conservatorship hearing, a letter arrived at the Foundation's main office addressed to me. The return address was my mother's. I stared at that envelope for a long time before opening it, my heart hammering, preparing myself for whatever manipulation or guilt trip or emotional warfare was contained inside. The letter was handwritten on expensive stationery, my mother's elegant script flowing across the page in the same style she'd used to write thank you notes to her bridge club friends. My dearest Octavia, it began, and I almost stopped reading right there because dearest was such obvious manipulation, such a transparent attempt to establish false intimacy. I'm writing to you even though I know I'm not supposed to have contact, but there are some things that need to be said, and I'm willing to accept the consequences if this letter is considered a violation of the court's orders. At least she acknowledged she was breaking the rules. That was something. Your father and I have spent this past year in therapy, both together and individually, working through the mistakes we made and trying to understand how we hurt you so deeply. Our therapist has helped us see that we enabled Benedict's worst behaviors, that we participated in gaslighting you, and that our actions constituted abuse even though we told ourselves we were helping you. I read that paragraph 3 times, looking for the catch. This sounded like actual accountability. This sounded like real self-awareness. But I kept reading, waiting for the inevitable turn, the moment when the apology would shift into blame. We understand now that you have every right to never speak to us again. We understand that we destroyed your trust and your sense of safety. We understand that we chose Benedict over you repeatedly throughout your childhood, and that pattern continued into adulthood until you were forced to protect yourself through legal means. Still waiting for the turn. Still waiting for the but. We're not writing to ask for forgiveness or reconciliation. We're writing because our therapist suggested that making amends means acknowledging harm without expecting anything in return. So here is our acknowledgement. We failed you as parents. We failed you repeatedly and systematically. We created an environment where you were always the problem and Benedict was always the solution, and that was cruel and wrong, and we're sorry. The word sorry sat there on the page, surrounded by all those other words that sounded right, that hit all the therapy speak notes, that demonstrated some level of self-awareness I'd never seen from my parents before. We've set up a trust fund in your name, the letter continued. Not because we think money fixes anything, but because it's the only tangible way we can demonstrate that we understand we tried to steal from you. The trust contains $200,000, the approximate amount we gave Benedict over the years while giving you nothing. It's administered by an independent trustee, so we have no control over it. You can use it however you want, or donate it to the foundation, or burn it if that would bring you peace. It's yours with no strings attached. I set the letter down and stared at the wall. $200,000. In a trust fund. Administered independently. No strings attached. This was either the most elaborate manipulation they'd ever attempted, or it was genuine repentance backed by concrete action. I picked up the letter and kept reading. We know that actions matter more than words, which is why we're also making this commitment. We will never attempt to contact you again after this letter. We will respect your boundaries completely. If you ever decide you want contact with us, you know how to reach us. But we won't reach out to you. We won't send birthday cards or holiday gifts or messages through third parties. We won't attend events where you might be present. We'll respect the restraining order and your right to a life free from our presence. We hope that someday you'll be able to forgive us, but we understand that might never happen. What we did is unforgivable in many ways. We just wanted you to know that we see it now. We see what we did to you. We see the harm we caused. And we're deeply, truly sorry. The letter was signed by both of them, my mother's flowing signature and my father's precise one, and underneath was a note in different handwriting. We've CC'd this letter to your attorney and to the probation department so they're aware we're initiating contact. We understand this may constitute a violation of the restraining order and we accept whatever consequences result from sending it. I read the letter 3 more times, looking for hidden meanings or manipulative subtext, but I couldn't find any. This seemed genuine. This seemed like actual accountability backed by concrete action and a commitment to respect my boundaries going forward. I didn't know what to do with that. For a year, I'd been operating under the assumption that my family was incapable of real change, that they'd go to their graves believing they were the victims, and I was the villain. This letter challenged that assumption. This letter suggested that maybe, possibly, through therapy and consequences and time, people could actually change. I called Karen. My parents sent me a letter, I said. They're acknowledging what they did, apologizing, and they set up a trust fund. I don't know if I'm being manipulated or if this is real. Forward me the letter, Karen said. Let me look at it with fresh eyes. I sent it to her and waited while she read it. Okay, she said finally. This is either the most sophisticated long con I've ever seen, or it's genuine. The trust fund is real, I can verify that. The commitment to no future contact is verifiable by their actions going forward. The acknowledgement of harm is specific and detailed. This doesn't read like manipulation to me. But it could be, I said. It could absolutely be, Karen agreed. People who are good at manipulation are good at sounding sincere. But here's what I think you should consider. What do they have to gain from this? They've already lost access to the inheritance. They're already on probation with restraining orders in place. Sending this letter risks violating those orders. What's their angle? I thought about that. Maybe they want me to drop the restraining orders. Maybe they think if they sound contrite enough, I'll let them back into my life and they can try again. Maybe, Karen said. Or maybe they're genuinely confronting what they did and trying to make amends in the only way available to them. Therapy can work, Octavia. People can change. It's rare, especially with narcissistic family systems, but it happens. What should I do? I asked. Nothing, Karen said. You don't have to respond. You don't have to forgive them. You don't have to accept their money or their apology or their narrative that they've changed. You can just acknowledge that they sent the letter, verify the trust fund is real, and then continue living your life without them in it. And if they've really changed, then they'll prove it by respecting your boundaries and never contacting you again like they promised, Karen said. Real change is demonstrated through sustained behavior over time, not through one well-written letter. If they're serious about this, they'll leave you alone and let you heal. If they're not, they'll find ways to wiggle back into your life within 6 months. I verified the trust fund. It was real. $200,000 in an independently administered trust with me as the sole beneficiary and no restrictions on how I could use it. I transferred the entire amount to the foundation's operating budget, earmarked specifically for women whose families had stolen from them and who needed legal support to recover their assets. If my parents' guilt money could help other women fight their own families in court, then something good would come from all of this. And then I did what Karen suggested. Nothing. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't thank them for the money. I didn't acknowledge their apology or their commitment to respect my boundaries. I just continued building the life I wanted, the one where they weren't central characters, but distant figures who'd once tried to destroy me and failed. 6 months passed, then a year, then 2. No contact from my parents, no birthday cards, no holiday messages, no attempts to reach out through mutual acquaintances or show up at foundation events. Just silence. Respectful, boundary-honoring silence. Benedict tried twice more to contact me, once through a fake social media account, and once through a letter to the foundation that the staff forwarded to Diana, without opening. Both times resulted in official warnings from his probation officer. Both times he claimed he was just trying to make amends. Both times he demonstrated that he hadn't actually changed at all, that he still believed his desire to feel better about himself trumped my right to be left alone. 2 years after the conservatorship hearing, I was featured in a national magazine article about innovative approaches to trauma recovery. The article included photos of the foundation, interviews with residents, and a detailed account of my own story, including the courtroom confrontation and the video evidence that had saved me. The article went viral. Suddenly, I was getting emails from women all over the country asking how they could access similar services, sharing their own stories of family abuse and legal battles, telling me that seeing someone fight back and win had given them hope. I hired staff to handle the inquiries. We expanded the foundation to offer virtual support groups for women who couldn't physically come to Savannah. We created a legal fund to help women afford attorneys who could fight conservatorship petitions and recover stolen inheritances. The foundation became bigger than me, bigger than my personal story, bigger than revenge or justice or anything I'd originally envisioned. One of the emails I received was from a woman named Jessica who'd been fighting her own family for control of her deceased father's company. "Your story gave me the courage to install cameras in my office," she wrote. "My brother destroyed company property and tried to frame me just like yours did. But I had video evidence because of you. I had proof because you showed me that documenting abuse isn't paranoid, it's smart. Thank you for being 10 steps ahead. Thank you for showing the rest of us how to protect ourselves." I printed that email and hung it on the wall of my office, right next to the ruined portrait of my grandfather. Because that's what this was all about. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not even justice in the traditional sense. It was about showing other women that you could survive your family's attempt to erase you. You could gather evidence. You could stay rational when they wanted you to seem crazy. You could protect yourself legally and emotionally and financially. And you could build something meaningful from the wreckage. 3 years after the conservatorship hearing, on what would have been my grandfather's 80th birthday, I held a ceremony at the foundation. We invited all current and former residents, staff members, board members, and supporters. I stood in front of the ruined portrait, and I told them the whole story one more time, because new women kept arriving who needed to hear it. "My family tried to convince the world I was crazy," I said. They destroyed my property and framed me for it. They drugged me and tried to force me to sign away my rights. They hired expensive lawyers and testified in court that I was incompetent. And they almost won because they were rich and connected and convincing. I paused. But they didn't win. Because I was smarter. Because I documented everything. Because I stayed calm when they needed me to break. Because I understood that in a legal system, evidence matters more than performance. And because my grandfather gave me the resources to fight back. I looked at the faces staring up at me, women of all ages and backgrounds united by the common experience of family betrayal. You can survive this, I told them. Whatever your family is doing to you, whatever lies they're telling, whatever legal battles they're forcing you to fight, you can survive it. Document everything. Trust your perception. Stay rational even when they're trying to make you seem unstable. And find people who believe you, because you're not crazy and you're not alone. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me, maybe 22 or 23, with red eyes and shaking hands. My parents are trying to have me declared incompetent, she said. They say I'm bipolar and I can't manage money. But I'm not. I'm just gay, and they can't handle it. I'm supposed to inherit my grandmother's estate next month, and they're trying to stop it. Have you talked to our legal team? I asked. She nodded. They're helping me file countermotions. They're helping me gather evidence. But I'm scared. What if I'm not as strong as you were? What if I can't handle it? I took her hands. You're already handling it. You're here. You're asking for help. You're documenting and protecting yourself. That's strength. That's survival. And you don't have to be as strong as me. You just have to be strong enough to keep going one day at a time until it's over. She started crying. I just want them to love me. Is that stupid? It's not stupid, I said. It's human. But here's what I learned. Some people aren't capable of the kind of love we need. And waiting for them to change, trying to earn their love, sacrificing ourselves to prove we're worthy, that destroys us. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is accept that they can't give you what you need and find it somewhere else. She hugged me. This stranger who'd driven 6 hours to attend a ceremony honoring my dead grandfather, and I realized this was why I'd survived. Not to punish my family or prove I was right, but to be standing here in this moment showing someone else that survival was possible. That you could be betrayed by the people who are supposed to love you most and still build a meaningful life. That damage didn't equal worthlessness. That sometimes the broken things were the most valuable because they told the truth about what happened instead of hiding it behind a pretty facade. That night, I received one final message from an unknown number. Just 4 words that would force me to make a decision I'd been avoiding for 3 years. Benedict is dying. Come. I stared at those 4 words on my phone screen until they blurred. Benedict is dying. Come. The message had come from my father's phone, which meant either he was violating the restraining order himself or someone had his phone and was reaching out without his knowledge or consent. Either way, this was a violation. Either way, I could have whoever sent this arrested. But all I could think about was dying. My brother was dying. I called Diana immediately, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My father just texted me, I said. He says Benedict is dying and wants me to come. What do I do? First, forward me the message, Diana said, her voice sharp and professional. Second, do not respond. Third, tell me exactly what you're feeling right now because that's going to determine what happens next. I forwarded the message and then sat down on the floor of my office, my back against the wall, trying to inventory my emotions. I'm angry that they're violating the restraining order. I'm suspicious that this is another manipulation. I'm terrified that it's real and my brother is actually dying and I'm going to have to decide whether to see him or not. And I'm guilty because part of me doesn't care if he's dying and that makes me feel like a monster. You're not a monster, Diana said firmly. You're someone who is systematically abused by her family and is protecting herself. If Benedict is dying, that's tragic, but it doesn't erase what he did to you. You don't owe him a deathbed reconciliation just because he's facing mortality. But what if he's really dying? I asked. What if this is his last chance to apologize for real, not through text messages that violate restraining orders, but face to face? What if I don't go, and I regret it for the rest of my life? Then you'll regret it, Diana said bluntly. But you'll regret it safely, from behind boundaries that protect you from people who've proven they'll hurt you. Octavia, I need you to hear me. If you go to see Benedict, if you voluntarily enter that situation, you're opening a door you've spent 3 years keeping closed. Your parents will be there. They'll use this moment to try to manipulate you emotionally. They'll frame it as a family reunion, a chance to heal, a dying son's last wish. And you'll be vulnerable, because death makes everyone vulnerable. I know, I whispered. So, I'm asking you again, what do you want to do? Not what you think you should do. Not what would make you look like a good person to people who don't matter. What do you want? I thought about that question.
Really thought about it.
What did I want? Did I want to see Benedict dying in a hospital bed? Did I want to hear his apology if he even had one to give? Did I want closure or reconciliation or some final moment of understanding between siblings who'd been at war for 3 years? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know what I want because I don't know what's real. If he's genuinely dying and genuinely sorry, that's different from if this is a manipulation to get me in a room with them. Then let's find out if it's real, Diana said. Give me 30 minutes. I'll make some calls. She called back in 20. Benedict was admitted to Savannah Memorial Hospital 4 days ago with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Diagnosis was apparently made 6 weeks ago. Prognosis is 2 to 3 weeks, possibly less. So yes, he's really dying. The news hit me like a physical blow. 6 weeks. He'd known for 6 weeks that he was dying and hadn't told me. Hadn't tried to reach out until now, until he was in the final days, until it was almost too late. What did that mean? That he hadn't wanted to reconcile until he was literally facing death? That my parents had convinced him to wait until the timing would create maximum emotional pressure? Or that he'd been respecting the restraining order and only broke it now because he was out of time? Are you still there? Diana asked. I'm here, I said. I just don't know what to do with this information. You have options, Diana said. Option 1. You do nothing. You stay away. You let him die without seeing him. The restraining order remains in place. You protect your peace. Option 2. You write a letter that I deliver on your behalf. You say whatever you need to say, without putting yourself in a room with your family. Option 3. You go to the hospital with me present as your attorney, and you set very strict boundaries about the visit. 15 minutes maximum. Your parents don't speak. Benedict says what he needs to say, and then you leave. What would you do? I asked. If it was your family? My family isn't yours, Diana said. But if you're asking my professional opinion, I think option 2 is safest. Write the letter. Say what you need to say. Let him read it or have someone read it to him. You get closure without exposure. And if I need to see him, if I need to look him in the eye one last time, then we do option 3, Diana said. But I'm going to be very clear with you, Octavia. If you go into that hospital room, if you see him dying and your parents crying, there's a part of you that's going to want to forgive everything. That's human. That's normal. Death has a way of making abuse seem less important, making boundaries seem cruel, making the abused person feel like the bad guy for not offering deathbed absolution. I thought about my grandfather's deathbed. How I'd sat with him for 3 days while he slowly let go of life. How we talked about art and beauty and what mattered. How he'd told me with perfect clarity that I should never let my family make me small, that I should use the inheritance to build something meaningful, that I should remember damaged things could be valuable. My grandfather's death had been peaceful, intentional. He'd prepared for it, made his wishes clear, said his goodbyes on his own terms. Benedict's death, apparently, was going to be a battlefield. One last manipulation. One last attempt to use emotion as a weapon to break down the boundaries I'd built to survive. I want to write a letter, I said. But I want you to read it first and tell me if I'm being too soft or too hard or too anything. Done, Diana said. Write it tonight. Send it to me in the morning. I'll deliver it tomorrow afternoon. I spent 4 hours writing that letter. I wrote 17 drafts. Some were angry, listing every harm he'd caused and refusing forgiveness. Some were soft, focusing on childhood memories and expressing sadness that we'd ended up here. Some tried to find a middle ground that felt honest without being cruel. The final version was 3 pages, handwritten, and it said everything I needed to say. Benedict, I received word that you're dying. I'm sorry you're facing this. I wouldn't wish this kind of death on anyone, including you. Diana is delivering this letter because I can't come to the hospital. Not because I don't care, but because I do. Because seeing you like this, seeing our parents in pain, being in that room with the weight of everything that's happened between us, would break something in me that I've worked very hard to rebuild. So I'm saying what I need to say from a safe distance, and I hope you can understand and respect that. You destroyed my property and framed me for it. You filed false police reports. You testified in court that I was mentally unstable. You participated in drugging me and conspiring to steal my inheritance. These are facts. These things happened. You did them deliberately, and they caused me enormous harm. I spent 72 hours in psychiatric hold because of your lies. I spent months fighting legal battles to protect myself from my own family. I spent years in therapy learning to trust my own perception again after you and our parents gaslight me into questioning my sanity. For a long time, I was angry about all of this. Furious. I wanted you to suffer consequences proportional to the harm you caused. I wanted you to understand what you'd done to me, to really understand it, not just intellectually but viscerally. I wanted you to feel a fraction of what I felt. But over time, the anger has faded into something sadder and more permanent. I've come to accept that you are who you are, that our parents raised you to believe you were entitled to everything and I was entitled to nothing, that you genuinely believed taking the inheritance from me was your right, that I was the obstacle rather than the victim. I don't think you're evil. I think you're broken in ways that made you dangerous to me, and I had to protect myself from that danger. I've heard that you're in therapy. I've heard you're working on yourself. I've heard your apologies through messages that violated the restraining order. And I want to believe you're genuine. I want to believe that facing death has given you clarity about your life and your choices. But belief requires trust, and you destroyed my ability to trust you. That's not something an apology can fix, no matter how sincere. So here's what I can offer you. I forgive you for being the person our parents raised you to be. I forgive you for not knowing how to be better when you didn't have models of better. I forgive you for the childhood stuff, the casual cruelties and competition, the ways you were favored, and I was scapegoated. None of that was entirely your fault. But I don't forgive you for the adult choices you made, for destroying my painting, for framing me, for testifying against me in court, for participating in drugging me. Those were deliberate, calculated decisions made by a grown man who knew better. You had opportunities to choose differently, and you didn't. You chose the inheritance over your sister. You chose money over family. You chose manipulation over honesty. And I can't forgive that because forgiving it would mean accepting that it was somehow okay. And it wasn't okay. It was abuse. If you want to die with a clear conscience, that's between you and whatever higher power you believe in. I can't give you absolution. I can only tell you that I've survived what you did to me. I've built something meaningful from the inheritance you tried to steal. I've helped other women survive their own families' betrayals. I've turned my damage into something valuable, just like grandfather taught me. In a weird way, you and our parents gave me a gift by being so terrible. You showed me exactly who not to be. You showed me what abuse looks like when it wears a suit and speaks in concerned tones and frames itself as love. You showed me that I was stronger than I thought I was, that I could outthink people who underestimated me, that I could survive being gaslit and drugged and legally attacked and come out the other side still sane. So thank you for that, I guess. Thank you for being such clear villains that I had no choice but to become the hero of my own story. I hope your death is peaceful. I hope you're not in pain. I hope that whatever time you have left gives you the clarity and peace you're seeking. But I won't be there for it. I won't hold your hand or tell you it's okay or give you the comfort of believing we've reconciled. Because we haven't. Because what you did can't be undone by a deathbed apology. Because I'm choosing to protect myself over making you feel better about dying. If that makes me a bad sister, I can live with that. I've been called worse by people who matter more.
Take care of yourself, Benedict.
Or don't. Either way, it's not my responsibility anymore. Octavia. I read the letter to Diana over the phone. When I finished, there was a long silence. That's perfect, she said finally. It's honest without being cruel. It's boundaried without being cold. It gives him truth instead of comfort, which is exactly what he deserves. Will it hurt him? I asked. Probably, Diana said. But hurt isn't the same as harm. Sometimes the truth hurts. That doesn't mean we shouldn't tell it. The next afternoon, Diana delivered the letter to Benedict's hospital room. I spent those hours at the foundation teaching a painting class to new residents, trying to focus on helping other women instead of obsessing about what my brother's reaction would be. Diana called me at 6 p.m. I gave him the letter, she said. He read it while I was there. He cried. Your parents were in the room and they wanted to know what it said, but he wouldn't let them read it. He just folded it up and put it under his pillow and said, "She's right. About all of it. She's right, and I don't deserve forgiveness." Your mother tried to argue with him, but he told her to leave. It was actually kind of satisfying to watch. Did he say anything else? I asked. He asked me to tell you thank you, Diana said. Thank you for the honesty. Thank you for not pretending. Thank you for the letter, even though you didn't have to write it. That's all. Okay, I said. Okay. Benedict died 6 days later. I found out through a news article, not through direct contact. Prominent Savannah surgeon Benedict Vance dies at 38, the headline read, followed by a glowing obituary that mentioned his medical career and community involvement, but carefully avoided mentioning his criminal record or the conservatorship case. There was a funeral planned.
Public.
Well attended. I didn't go. I sent flowers to the funeral home with a card that said simply, "With sympathy for your loss." Professional. Distant. Appropriate for someone who'd been legally separated from the deceased for 3 years. My parents didn't try to contact me, didn't send me details about the funeral, didn't ask me to attend. They respected the boundary, which was either growth or strategy.
I didn't know which, and I didn't need to.
The day of Benedict's funeral, I held a painting session at the foundation. We created abstract pieces using only red paint, processing anger and grief, and complicated emotions about family. One woman painted aggressive slashes across her canvas. Another created something that looked like blood, but wasn't. I painted my brother as I remembered him from childhood, before he became the golden child, when he was just a kid who sometimes shared his toys and sometimes didn't. We hung all the paintings in the main gallery, a temporary exhibition called Complicated Grief. Because that's what this was. Not the clean sadness of losing someone you loved purely, but the messy, confusing grief of losing someone who'd hurt you, someone you'd survived, someone whose death brought relief and sadness in equal measure. 3 days after the funeral, my mother's therapist called me. "Your mother would like to meet with you," she said. Just once. Supervised by me.
To say things she needs to say.
Would you be willing? And I had to decide one final time whether to open the door or keep it closed. So let me ask you something, because I need to know I'm not alone in this. Have you ever had to decide whether to forgive someone who is dying? Have you ever written a letter saying everything you needed to say, knowing the person might not live long enough to really hear it? Have you ever chosen your own peace over someone else's comfort and felt both guilty and relieved about it? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Tell me about the family member you had to cut off. Tell me about the deathbed reconciliation you refused or accepted. Tell me about the complicated grief nobody warned you about. Because here's what I've learned. There's no right answer. There's just the answer that lets you sleep at night. The answer that protects your hard-won peace. The answer that honors the person you've become instead of the person they wanted you to be. My brother died believing I was right about everything. My parents lost both their children, one to death and one to boundaries. And I'm still here, still building, still helping other women survive their families, still choosing myself over their comfort. Some people will say I'm heartless, that I should have gone to the hospital. that I should have offered deathbed forgiveness regardless of what he'd done.
But those people didn't live my life.
Didn't survive what I survived. Didn't build what I built from the wreckage of family love that was never really love at all. Hit that subscribe button if you want to know what happened when I met with my mother's therapist. Because that conversation changed everything I thought I knew about forgiveness, about family, and about whether people can really change. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for understanding that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away, even when they're dying. Especially when they're dying.